Hi everybody, this is Rex and welcome to my hunting bow guide for Hunt Showdown. This video has been frequently requested by my viewers on Twitch as the bow is by far my most played weapon. During my 1800 hours of gameplay, I've racked up something like 3,000 to 4,000 bow kills and my bow clips have been frequently featured on Hunt Showdown highlight videos on YouTube. The aim of this video is to teach you the basics of the bow as well as some of the more advanced techniques, positioning and movement. After watching this video, you should have learned about the following basics. Pros and cons of the bow, hipfire versus aim down sight, picking up arrows, the bleeding effect and how it can be used to your advantage, different arrow types, bow traits and trait combinations, as well as ideal weapon combinations. You should also be aware of the more advanced techniques such as arrow pulling for PvP and PvE, jump shots, quickfire, and predicting arrow drop and leading shots. Finally, you should have general knowledge about positioning and movement with the bow, including pushing versus defending, using cover to your advantage, movement whilst reloading, and moving between shots. Alright, let's get into it. The pros and cons of the hunting bow. Hunting bow is a unique weapon in Hunt Showdown as its mechanics are very different from most guns. The weapon is unlocked at level 54 and can be purchased for $57 Hunt dollars. The weapon has a lot of upsides but also a few downsides, although these can be countered by making smart choices and applying the techniques covered in this video. In my opinion, the main upsides of the hunting bow are the following. The weapon is very cheap relative to how effective it is. It has a high one-shot potential to the torso and headshots will always kill. It has plenty of ammo if you pick up your arrows or run two bows together. The bow is a 2-slot weapon, which allows for a variety of weapon combinations. It is also very quiet, which makes it a great weapon for solo players or players who like to play quietly. This is a great weapon for AI and bosses. Although time-consuming to master, the bow becomes more fun to play the more you learn and improve. The weapon comes with a few downsides, however. It has a very steep learning curve and it can take hundreds of hours to truly master the weapon. It also lacks long range and penetration power. Hipfire versus aim down sight. When you see me playing the bow, you will probably notice that I usually always hipfire rather than ADS. I frequently get asked why that is, and the answer is quite simple. Hipfiring the bow is very accurate, even on range, while it leaves you more overview than if you were to aim down sight. ADS still has its benefits though, and you'll typically see me ADS when I'm going for more accurate shots on moving targets, or on long range on players that aren't moving. Picking up arrows. The bow comes with 16 arrows, and these can be picked up where they land. As a beginner, I was usually not picking up my arrows and ended up running out of ammo. I suggest you make a habit of picking up your arrows when possible right from the start. If you're struggling to locate your arrows, you can bring the perk Blades here, which highlights your arrows in dark sight, although I generally never run this. The bleeding effect. While arrows deal a tremendous amount of damage, they also apply a bleeding effect on impact. The combination of high damage and bleed ultimately results in players either being forced to stop the bleed and hence unable to fight back, or simply bleeding out. Knowing this effect, you can tactically wait out your enemies by staying in cover until this happens, and then push while they are trying to stop the bleeding. A common mistake I've made a lot is to push too early and getting killed only to watch them survive with low HP. Patience is a virtue. Different arrow types. For the sake of this video not being too long, I won't go into too much detail about the arrow types of the bow, but I'll say this. As a beginner, you should only be playing regular arrows. There are 3 other arrow types, all of which comes with their own benefits, but none of which are very useful for beginners, although this might be a topic for another video. The available arrow types are the following. Concertina arrows, which explode into barbed wire. Poison arrows, which applies a regular poison effect impairing vision and hearing. And finally, the frag arrows, which will explode and deal damage after a few seconds. All of the special ammo types come with greatly reduced ammo pools and are generally not better for killing players unless combined with each other or other weapons. Bow traits and trait combinations. The main trait you need to know about is called 100 hands. This trait, although not technically required, is greatly advantageous as it increases the damage of a full drawn bow by 10%, increasing the one-shot potential. I usually run this perk whenever I can. The perk currently costs 2 trait points, which makes it an easy choice. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that the 100 hands perk slightly increases the draw time, although I would argue that it doesn't make a huge difference. As previously mentioned, the Blade Seer trait can be useful for highlighting your arrows. The third bow trait is called Dewclaw and allows you to use your arrows as a melee weapon using a melee attack hotkey. I personally rarely run this trait as of right now. When it comes to trait combinations, I have a few traits that I like to run with the bow. Trait choices in Hunt Showdown in general will always come down to personal preference and playstyle, so keep that in mind. I like to run Lightfoot, Kiteskin, and Quartermaster with the bow. Lightfoot is fantastic for remaining stealthy whilst vaulting, climbing ladders, or dropping from heights. Combined with Kiteskin, you also take 50% less fall damage, which can be absolutely amazing in certain scenarios, such as when you're going for an arrow pull kill, which I will explain later in this video. Quartermaster is often a trait of choice for me as it allows me to counter for the lack of long range that the bow has. With Quartermaster, you can bring a 3-slot weapon, such as a sniper rifle, which allows you to fight efficiently at any range. Ideal weapon combinations. As with trade options, weapon combinations are also highly based on playstyle and preference. Objectively speaking, the bow mainly lacks long range, and as such I would recommend that you pair it with a weapon that is effective on long range. A few viable options would be the Spark Sniper Rifle, the Winfield Marksman, or your favorite long ammo rifle. If you're not running the Quartermaster perk, I can recommend the Springfield Deadeye or the Winfield Vandal Deadeye. If you feel you need more arrows, consider running 2 bows for the double ammo pool whilst learning. As your skill increases, you'll most likely find that you don't need it after a while. Arrow pulling for PvE and PvP. I mentioned earlier in this video that arrows will stick to their target and can be retrieved afterwards. This also applies to enemy hunters and AI, and it comes with a massive benefit that most players don't consider. Pulling out your arrows from your target deals massive damage. After landing a fully drawn bow shot on a player without getting the kill, pulling out the arrow will almost always be enough to finish them. A common mistake that I used to make when I was a beginner was to try and land a follow-up shot when the target was close to me instead of just smashing that F button for an instant kill. If you can implement this technique into your gameplay, you'll not only have more fun, but you'll also see success in a lot of cases where you normally wouldn't. Pulling your arrows also deals damage to regular AI and can be very useful for killing bosses. I like to call this the porcupine technique. Land multiple arrows in the Butcher, Scrapbeak, or Spider, and then pull out all your arrows in quick succession for massive damage leading to the next enrage phase. Generally, you want to wait until the boss is out of enrage before pulling the arrows. Jump shots. This technique is not a bow-specific technique, but I would argue that it's extremely useful in a lot of scenarios. Jumping with a drawn bow will often allow you to get angles that you normally wouldn't have, and I am noticing an increasing amount of kills happening this way as I have become a better bow player. Quickfire. The bow can be quickfired by simply pressing the left mouse button. This way of firing the bow can be tricky in the beginning, but is very useful for killing groups of grunts in quick succession. As you improve with the bow, you'll likely find this to happen naturally. Predicting arrow drop and leading shots. Unlike most weapons in Hunt Showdown, the arrows fired from the hunting bow will drop over distance. The effective range of the bow is 23 meters, meaning the arrows will start dropping after that distance. Whereas a bullet fired from a gun on a distant target would land exactly where you aim, the arrows from your bow would drop to the ground much sooner. This makes it really tricky to land shots at targets at a distance, as you have to aim higher based on how far away the target is. On top of that, the velocity or speed of your arrows is not that high, and you will therefore have to lead your shots ahead of a moving target for it to land. This is probably a mechanic that you're used to with other guns in the game, although the effect is larger with the bow as the velocity is only 150 meters per second. For comparison, the Mosin has 615 meters per second and the Winfield has 400 meters per second. Positioning and movement. The bow is a great all-around weapon that can be useful in any situation, perhaps with the exception of long-range engagements as previously discussed. Personally, I think that the bow is great for both pushing into compounds or engaging in fights, as well as holding your ground and defending, whether you're in a building, defending a boss banish, or out in the woods. Whatever the scenario might be, each scenario has one thing in common. The bow is a weapon that heavily relies on movement and positioning. Whereas most guns allow you to fire multiple times between reloads as well as running around whilst reloading, this is not the case with the bow. Drawing the bow will slow down your movement, and drawing the next arrow takes about a second. When possible, I suggest you implement the following technique into your playstyle. Draw your bow when you're in cover or moving into cover. Leave your cover when you're ready to fire. Fire your arrow and then either move into cover immediately or start drawing your bow as you are moving back into cover. The time when you're drawing your bow is the time that you're the most vulnerable. If you're able to use cover correctly, you will make yourself an extremely tricky target. Furthermore, pushing a bow player who has their bow drawn is almost always a death sentence, meaning you have the upper hand when you're in cover. Play at your own terms and use the safety of cover to dictate whether you push or hold. Sometimes a combination of both is the solution. If you find yourself caught without cover, the best solution is usually to seek cover when possible. If seeking cover isn't an option, make sure to move as much as possible between shots. An example, fire an arrow, move, redraw, fire the next arrow. Alternatively, if you're feeling confident in your capabilities, taking your time to aim that one perfect shot can sometimes be the solution, although risky as you generally won't get a second attempt. That concludes this bow guide, everyone. I hope that this video has been somewhat informative and that you learned something new that you can implement into your own gameplay. Hopefully I've been able to inspire some of you to try out the hunting bow for the first time as well. Please keep in mind that this weapon is one of the harder ones to master, but the time investment is, in my opinion, definitely worth it. So don't give up if it's not working out in the beginning. A few final things to take note of. Regular arrows will not blow up barrels, but will blow up emulators. You can undraw your bow by pressing the R button. And finally, shooting things like bells or lanterns can sometimes make for great distractions. If you have any questions or feedback, I would love to hear it. If you want to check out some of my bow gameplay, I post compilation videos here on YouTube weekly, and I also stream on Twitch 3 to 5 days per week. If you want to support the channel further, there's a Patreon page. My schedule can be found in my Discord channel, and I'll leave all my links below. Thank you so much for watching.